Is technological advancement interlinked with spiritual evolution? Is zero-point energy even real? And how does zero-point energy even work? Come on, let's access the Akashic records and find out. Welcome back to Accessing the Akashic Records, episode 15, Zero-Point Energy to Spiritual Evolution. Now, I couldn't go into the Ascension Harvest Rapture episode without first driving home this very, very critical component that enables us to understand how technology is deeply interlinked with how a civilization evolves, how it understands itself and the universe it inhabits. First, let's cover the science. What is zero-point energy or free energy? How does it work and how is it even possible? So, in previous episodes I have explained some of the maths and physics behind it, but I'll go into depth about it right now. The best way and easiest way for me to describe this is to use the propulsion system of a flying saucer or UFO. But one of my favourite research topics is the UFO issue and how they work. So a great example here, as you can see in this picture, is the flux liner, or ARV, Alien Reproduction Vehicle, that Mark McCandless showed to the world in front of members of Congress back in 2001 on Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project. Now, with this issue, what most people tend to struggle with understanding is how this level of physics works, in that it doesn't defy general relativity as such that Einstein discovered. It in fact is just the existence of another dimension that he never figured out, he never factored in. He knew it was there. He spoke of unseen realities, unseen worlds, but he never quite was able to bring it into fruition, this theory that he had. So in this dimension resides an infinite supply of energy that we can tap into and phase physical matter in and out of, electrically speaking. So as Einstein's theory goes, when matter approaches the speed of light, its mass becomes so infinitely dense that it prevents the possibility of moving past that point of speed, that speed of light. So introducing the Aether, the unified field, zero-point field, vacuum of space, source field, call it what you will, whatever floats your boat, call it God, whatever, where we can tap into this phase of, we can tap into and phase out our physical matter out of this space-time and into time-space. So effectively what you do is cancel the mass of the object, and when doing so, that can then move through and move past the speed of light. So this has done the generation of a toroidal field, or in the case of the flux liner, a counter-rotating mercury vortex engine that generates this torus. Now, I've shown you in previous episodes what the torus is, but here again I'll go through it with you. Now, this generation of energy is called implosion, as opposed to explosion of combustion engines that require a constant fuel source. So while it does require a small amount of electrical charge to get the mercury rotating, it then generates more energy than it is used from then onwards. And here's a great little picture from Victor Schauberger's work, showing, hence why it's in Russian, showing the explosion and implosion. So different generations of energy. So as you can see in this picture here, the torus or the toroidal field, where energy is coming out of the singularity in the middle of the vortex there, the singularity or point of unity where all of creation comes from, is in the center, coming out from time-space, and in doing so the atoms of the physical matter within the field electrically sped up to move at a higher frequency where they phase out of this space-time dimension into time-space. So if you remember back to my episodes on the dimensions and densities, and also the metaphysical science of space-time and time-space, where I covered this science in great detail. So if it's not making 100% sense to you, may pay to go back after watching this video and watch those again. So what is occurring is when you phase into time-space, you're in fact moving through time instead of space. So the experience of time, of the occupants inside the vehicle would be different to those who are watching it, and that's why you have like a flying saucer that'll appear to vanish, flash of light, to people who are watching it on the ground. It's there, and then all of a sudden it defies all known physics because it's manipulating space-time and moving into time-space. As you can see here, this is from a scientific paper on warp drive technology and how it works. So the toroidal field generated, which is causing a warp in space-time, compresses space-time at the front, depending on where the actual field is directed. So if you think back, the top pole, you have space-time being compressed in, and then the negative pole, it's being expanded out behind it. So that's how the propulsion is working: compression and expansion out of the rear. So depending where it's facing, where you face the field, and I'll explain the controls of the flux liner, so that kind of helps give you a visual perspective on how it works a little more. So how do we control the field in regards to this ARV? So there's a control for each hand. The lever adjusts the electrical strength, the sphere there, that adjusts the focus of where the field is pointed. So as you hold the sphere, you want to bank left, so you tilt the sphere out to your right, and you bank left. You tilt the sphere out to the left, and you'll bank right. You tilt it rearwards, and you'll be heading backwards. You tilt it backwards, and you'll be heading forwards. So it makes a lot of aerodynamic sense in the way a pilot would comfortable in directing. Makes a lot of sense. And the lever adjusts the strength, so to go up, you leave it in the natural down position and just give it more electrical charge, and it'll move straight up. Same if you want to move forward, tilt the sphere backwards and accelerate, give it more electrical charge, and it'll condense more space and expand more space out the rear. You're effectively moving through time as opposed to space, or more time instead of space. If you were wanting to go down, simply use less of the electrical charge, and that'll phase the matter into space-time as opposed to being in time-space. So there'll be more physical matter, and it'll bring the vehicle down, and everything within that field, that toroidal field, will gain more mass and therefore levitate down. That's basically the idea behind those controls. So there you have your scientific explanation of how, or as scientific as we'll make it in this video at least, of how this spiritual metaphysical science works and how we can manipulate space-time. But how does this all relate to our evolution? Well, we must understand that this is in fact proof that we are all connected in the exact same way that we generate this 0-point energy, is the exact same way how every living thing gets its life force energy. Everything, even the earth, has this toroidal field receiving its energy or consciousness from this dimension where time doesn't exist like it does in this dimension, where our souls go when the physical body is no longer usable. It's the connection between everything in space-time physicality. It is the proof of how we are all one. Everything is an emanation from this infinite source. As the first Hermetic principle of mentalism states, all is mental. The universe is mental, which basically means all of creation is a thought in the mind of the infinite creator, or intelligent infinity. Enlightened with this knowledge of spiritual implications, a civilization is able to change its mental paradigm and begin rapidly evolving, as you could quite well imagine if you're able to fathom what's being covered here. All living things have this toroidal field around them, and if that's a new concept to you, then I would encourage you to look more into it. It's the magnetic field of life force energy that surrounds every biological life, all organic life. Even the planet and galaxies have this energy. It exists everywhere. It's around a tree, as you can see there, and Apple, the Earth, galaxies, everything. It's the natural spiritual energy. So it seems for many reasons this knowledge is actually being kept from us, such as money and greed of the financial elites who control our politicians and own the lion's share of the energy industry, along with many other areas that they own outside of the scope of this episode. But if you're in the truth community and ufology and conspiracy and all that, you probably already come to that conclusion. Then the politicians also, who realise this would disrupt the economy greatly and render many jobs redundant, and through their foolishness they can't really see any positive outcome or solutions. Then we've got the military, who see the national security threat, and not only of other countries but of the public having the ability to disappear and reappear in an instant anywhere in the world could pose a slight problem to them. So while they think their concern and rationale is very valid, they don't fully grasp the spiritual component and how the Earth will in fact die soon if we don't cease this suppression. Also how we will evolve and mental paradigm will change, and therefore things will be a lot different. We won't have to worry about many issues related to it. Okay, also very important to note here, as it says in the Law of One, there's a question: what does the Orion group have, and what's the objective with respect to the conquest of the Orion group? So the Orion group are basically some negative beings. We can only surmise that it's most likely the reptilians and greys that are part of this, but we do suspect there may be other beings involved that have been conquered. And Ra responds by saying, as we have previously said, their objective is to locate certain mind-body-spirit complexes which vibrate in resonance with their own vibrational complex. So basically what that means is anyone who's of that left-hand negative path, who's towards the distortion of control and manipulation of people and fear, that kind of vibration, that negative control over others. So the elites, the financial elites of the world, those who are warmongers and things like that, who are psychopathic in nature, these are the service to self. Those are the ones who are of that vibration, who are really pushing and who are getting close to what may be deemed as harvestable for that negative ascension, so to speak. So then what they do is enslave the unelite. So the ones who aren't elite, the one elite meaning of that vibration, of that left-hand path, who are fairly extreme and hardline, so which is pretty much everyone, the majority of the world, who aren't of that. So these Orion groups pick out a small number of these people who are of that high left-hand negative vibration and use them to control the masses. So they do it all from a very covert, stand back, hands off approach. Instead they get the humans to do it. Enslave the unelite, as you may call those who are not of the Orion vibration. So what do the Crusaders do? The Crusaders move in their chariots to conquer planetary mind people before they reach the stage of achieving social memory. Now, if you remember back to episode 1, I spoke in great detail about what social memory is. And basically it's the Akashic records, having access to what's recorded in this spiritual data bank, this spiritual hard drive. And it's not direct telepathy with one another to see, what their memory is. It's a log of all memory within a society or a race, so they can see, what happened in the past. They can find out the truth because it's all logged there, all thoughts, all information, all experiences, that kind of thing is all logged in there, and anybody can access it within that race or that civilization. So, as for the chariots, Ra, later on in the same line of questioning, explains what these chariots are. They're saucer or disc-shaped vehicles used to travel around. Silverish grey colour, I think he uses darker than silver colour. So you can pretty well imagine exactly what he's talking about there. So, on one hand, I understand the politicians, military and government in general see humanity as not being able to use this positively, and that is why we need to educate the world on the spiritual implications of this beforehand, so we can make that paradigm shift and actually use it positively. Then, on the other hand, we have to consider that civilization has actually been manipulated for thousands of years by entities that know exactly how this deeper evolutionary issue works, the process, the knowledge of this technology, and they've been using it to their advantage. And I will actually cover this a bit more in the next episode when I cover Ascension, Harvest and all that good stuff, Rapture, the shift, the event, call it what you will. And as I pointed out in previous episodes, there's been many times throughout history where civilizations have actually reached a point in their technology where they're tapping into this dimension, perhaps not in exact same way as it's being done now, and the same technology and the same way that I've just explained either. It certainly did occur though. Now, from the amazingly technologically advanced civilization of Atlantis to the pyramids of all around the world, where that is actually being harnessed, that free energy, prana, call it what you will, right up to the Nazis in the 30s and 40s, who certainly had this technology down pat. They had the craft like the most famous Die Glocke or the bell, as you can see there in that left diagram, and up in the top right, the Hanabu. Also down the bottom right, the Andromeda machine, which is just a modified submarine with a mercury vortex engine instead of propellers and combustion engine or nuclear reactor or anything like that. However, unlike the Nazis, in ancient times this technology was shared among the people instead of kept hidden for negative military use and political agendas, which now, in retrospect, we can see parallels in our current circumstance, can't we? The ancients were in these periods of golden age of enlightenment, got to this point, as it's directly related to the cycles which I spoke of in the last episode, as this technological understanding, this metaphysical science and how to harness it is all part of the cycle when a civilization is due to be what's called harvestable or ready for ascension. So if we think back to the cycles civilizations are taken from a basic or primitive beginnings, where the struggle to survive is the main focus of the civilization, and they go through all these further struggles throughout each age, experiencing all the new struggles, and they bring about great change though. And as we all know from an individual perspective, it's these struggles that we work out that end up defining us greatly and give us great courage that we can work through them and feel great that we came out the other side a stronger person. The same is true for a civilization that's gone through the hard times to achieve a deeper understanding and move beyond fear and work as a unified collective, all equal, sovereign, loved and respected. At that point in civilization, a vast majority of souls are usually expected to be at the point where they are harvestable, to use the law of one terminology again, which basically means just ready for the next level of evolution in consciousness. Going off the law of one, that next level is called fourth density. Now, this is the point where I'll have to leave it as a to be continued, because that's delving into what the next episode is all about. So sorry to leave you on a cliffhanger there, but be sure to check the description box below this video for some great documents and information on free energy and warp drive propulsion, all that great stuff, and more to do with other things in this episode that I covered. And I hope you're excited to see the next episode as I am. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave a comment and share the video if you could. That would be lovely. Thank you for watching. Namaste. Love and light to you all.